Hi, we're Shannon and Jerry Arner.
And our dog, Betty White.
Your hosts of the Arner Adventures podcast.
Could we have named it something more creative? Probably. But it's the name of our blog. It's our last name. We're on an adventure. Yada, yada, yada. After owning our own business, working 24/7.
And don't forget a mental breakdown in between.
We made a lifestyle change and decided to make the most out of life.
We sold our house, most of our belongings, downsized, and moved to the coast.
We live life minimally, but fully.
We live each day as an adventure.
This show will help you learn how to live life more fully, with more intention, by experiencing more, and with less stuff.
We'll talk about our own experiences, interview others who have much to share by creating a spark in our lives.
Some days we'll share real-life ongoings of what we're going through, and others will talk about our favorite flavor of waffle.
Come join our adventure.
It's the Arner Adventures Podcast. Hello, everyone. I'm Jerry.
And I'm Shannon.
Betty White, our sweet fur baby, is snuggled here with us per usual, and we are back with episode 26 of the Arner Adventures Podcast.
Today, we are so excited to be back with our Spark in Our Lives episode. This guest is so inspiring, and we can't wait to tell you all about her. But first, let's get to the review of the week.
Today's review comes from Banks Boston 40. Banks Boston 40 says, I'm new to the podcast game, but as a fan of the blog, I'm now a podcast listener. I enjoy this positive addition to my life. Pretty soon I'll be starting a garden, decluttering my junk, and traveling more. Not a bad influence, these Arners. A great listen. Highly encouraged.
Wow.
Hey, Banks Boston 40.
That is amazing.
Yeah, thanks.
Especially since Banks Boston 40 has been a follower of the blog. I mean, we're so honored and grateful that you appreciate the content that we put together and that we can be a good influence.
Right on, man. Right
on.
Yeah. And if you'd like to be our review of the week and get the chance to receive a gift from Sugar Wish, please take a moment and give us a 5-star reviewer rating. We have an easy link for you all to follow. It's lovethepodcast.com/Arner Adventures, but no worries, we'll link it for you in the show notes.
It really helps us so much to support us and keeps us so excited and motivated to keep us bringing you inspiring guests like the one we're getting ready to introduce you to today.
While you're at it, be sure to hit that subscribe button in the platform you're listening to us on, and you'll be sure to be notified each time we have an episode drop.
Well, let's get to today's episode. Our guest today is Lindsey Ferris of FerrisBuilt. That may sound familiar to you if you're a longtime follower of ours, Arner Adventures. We've partnered with Lindsey on many mental health awareness campaigns. You may have seen us wearing products of hers, like t-shirts and apparel that brings the topic of mental health to the forefront. We love that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she's such a great mental health advocate and businesswoman, which is why we are so excited to have her on the show.
Well, let's get to the episode and tell you all about her. You ready?
I'm ready. Well, we are so honored to be able to bring you our guest today. Our guest series is called Spark in Our Lives because our guests are truly a spark in our lives. And this guest is the epitome of that phrase. Our guest today is Lindsey Ferris. Lindsey is the owner and designer at FerrisBuilt. FerrisBuilt is a Seattle-based business that offers empowering apparel and goods with topics covering mental health and current events. You've seen us wear her clothing and heard us talk about it. You may remember us talking about it on episode 20, where we talked about our favorites for Mental Health Awareness Month. Lindsey is a wonderful mental health advocate and currently working on her master's degree in marriage and family therapy. She's also the single mother of twin girls, so we are really grateful for her time today. Lindsey, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here and get to talk to you. Well, kind of in person, right? Virtual in person.
Yeah.
A bit, so.
Yeah. We've known each other on social media and via email for, I don't know, maybe a couple of years. It seems like maybe during COVID.
Yeah, I think it was early COVID, and yeah. So I feel like I know you already, even though we haven't talked yet.
I know. And Jerry can't be here, so he's super jealous that he can't actually see you virtually, but you know, he'll just have to do it another time. So
I'm gonna say hi. Hi, Jerry.
Yeah. So yes, you are very busy, and so we do appreciate it. And are you in Seattle right now?
Yeah, I'm in Seattle. I'm based in North Seattle.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We love Seattle. And I think when I first met you, well, via, again, email and stuff, and found out you were in Seattle, I remember that was the beginning of COVID. We had no idea how long this was all going to last. And I remember saying, oh yeah, I'm going to get to Seattle soon. I'll be able to meet you face to face. And then, here we are, and we still haven't, but hopefully we'll get to be there at some point and meet you face to face. How did you and your girls do through the whole pandemic? I mean, you're an outdoorsy person, right? Did you guys get out and sort of flourish and do stuff outdoorsy during that time?
We did. We did a lot of, we'd walk in the neighborhood and kind of followed all the guidelines, or we'd go, if we went to the, for a while you couldn't go to the parks or a lot of the hikes and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of just, they'd get on their bikes and I'd walk or jog, or, I picked up running, then I stopped running after I got through COVID. So we kind of adapted to what we kind of had around us. I felt lucky in a random way as a parent, because I felt like, they're in middle age, right? Or middle school. I'm middle age, they're middle school.
Right.
And, normally they'd just be off being social. And I felt like I got extra time as a parent, just being with them, being home and doing school from home. And so I kind of felt like, the silver lining, I got more time with my kids during that. So it was good, but it was definitely, for me, it was a bit stressful just I had lost my company during COVID and was trying to make a change, and single parent, single income household and all of that. But yeah.
So I read that you previously worked in corporate for Microsoft and Apple in event planning and project management. Is that right?
Yeah. So I did about, almost 20 years I did Microsoft, then I was Apple Computer. I went back to Microsoft, and then I left Microsoft and started my own company with another woman. And we did event production and project management for 12 years. And so we had a company of 8 employees. And in February of 2020, so 2 years ago, we lost all of our contracts in about a 48-hour period, and then kind of tried to sustain the employees for another 3 or 4 months. And then we had to eventually shut the doors. So because events were shut down, and yeah.
And so did you have FerrisBuilt before that, or is that what sort of cultivated the creation of FerrisBuilt?
It's actually, so I had an Etsy shop for years. I've always been creative and just put stuff up there on a whim. And so when I was going through the stress of losing my company, losing my job, I had already started my master's program as more of I think I want to do this someday. And so when I was in that transition, I threw myself into my wood shop. I was doing and building furniture for an Airbnb that I was building out. And then I also kind of threw myself into some of the current event outlets. I started designing like shirts and different things through a company called Printify, which is print on demand provider. And so I started doing those things on Etsy, and I thought, I'm just going to throw myself into my art and see where it takes me. And the wood art that I did and the creative art stuff wasn't actually selling, but my current event merchandise was. And so it was largely around current topics. It was political topics. It was, different things that were coming up that I'd make funny quips for, or different designs for. And I kept ignoring that stuff was selling, but I keep thinking my art will sell, my wood art will sell. That wasn't selling. So FerrisBuilt, as it is today, basically came to life that summer. And then in fall, I realized, maybe I need to listen to what people are actually buying and start.
Okay. So, all right. So kind of on that, and then you talked about going back to school. Where does your passion for mental health come from? If you don't mind me asking and you don't mind sharing.
I've always been an advocate for it. I think being a Gen Xer growing up, mental health was kind of a taboo topic. And so it was, I have anxiety. I've always struggled with anxiety. Many of us do. And growing up in generation I did, it was kind of taboo, right? It was, don't feel that way, change your mind, don't, you're thinking about things too much. And so at a young age, I kind of had that inner fighter that said, why? Why can't people talk about these things? Why can't we advocate for this? And so I've seen the power of good therapy, both in my own life and in friends and family of mine. And so for me, it was something that, why is this essentially a taboo topic? Why is there stigma around it? People talk about physical health issues. They talk about, different, my legs broke or this is happening, as, there's no taboo around that. And so I found as I was going through FerrisBuilt with the current events, I was noticing a lot of mental health topics coming up with the pandemic, kids struggling with a variety, depression, anxiety, there was suicidality that was coming up more. And I started just thinking, I'm going to use this platform to maybe start advocating and trying to create more awareness around mental health topics as a way to embrace them. So it kind of naturally shifted to that. I was like, this is something that I think is really important to talk about openly or help create conversation starters. So it's kind of a lifetime of being around it, and then also being knee deep in school and just being like, I really feel passionate that people should talk about these things more.
Right. Jerry and I say this all the time, and I could say it till I'm blue in the face, but I love when anyone can put the conversation of mental health into regular conversation, and putting the messaging that you do onto your products and in the format that you do is so great. You know, when Jerry and I wear, and I know people have seen it on Instagram, but like we wear the clothes that we have of yours all the time. And I mean, people will see that. I mean, you've seen it, but we'll have the PTSD warrior mugs on the daily. And we don't even think about the fact that sometimes we'll be on our Instagram stories and we'll have them and people will go, oh my God, where did you get that mug? You know, but I think it's interesting. You know, I have one of my favorite, I love a long sleeve t-shirt that's really good quality, and your stuff is really good quality. But I have my OCD t-shirt and I love it. And I get so many compliments on it and comments because people will see it and then it's pretty. And then they go, oh, is that OCD? And then they'll see, you know, the swirl, and we talk about it. And I always think to myself when I walk away, when else am I going to engage with someone about the fact that I have OCD and my anxiety, and then they're going to tell me about their anxiety? When else am I going to have that conversation? I'm not, especially with a stranger. And so I was thinking about that. I'm like, not only is she doing this with these clothing and people see it online and people talk about it, but it allows us to wear it and then have these conversations with strangers. And that is never going to happen anywhere else, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I wore, so one of my personal favorites, I have an anxiety state, or I have one that's Maha, my anxiety has anxiety, because I joke sometimes, I'm like, I don't know why I have anxiety, but I have anxiety because I don't have anxiety. Or
yeah. What am I supposed to be worried about right now?
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
When I wear those, I'll get recognition sometimes. And I've had the most random and lovely conversations about those things, or somebody will comment and say, wait, what is that? I'm like, yeah, it's about anxiety. Do you have anxiety right now? And
yeah,
dialogues. And so there's dialogue happening. And that was kind of the, you know, inspiration around it, was how can I create something that is attuned with kind of the topics, right? So like the OCD one, it's not overt. It has kind of symbolism that represents it. So it's a little bit more subtle. Some of them are more overt. Some of them I call out directly in the designs. But my hope is it allows people to have conversations as well as normalize having conversations about mental health topics.
You've all heard us rave about Sugar Wish. I don't think there's a day that passes where I'm not telling somebody about it.
Sugar Wish is definitely one of those businesses where you ask yourself, why didn't I think of that?
How many times have you wanted or needed to send a gift to someone and it was either one, last minute, or two, you didn't want to send just another gift that's going to lay around and take up space?
Or you just didn't have any idea what to get the person? Sugar Wish allows you to send a sweet gift to someone, and the recipient gets to choose their favorites.
We've received Sugar Wish gifts and sent Sugar Wish gifts, and they are always a hit. You cannot go wrong. It's super easy. You go to the website, sugarwish.com, choose the size of the gift you want to send, enter a personalized message and note tailored to the person you're sending it to. It arrives to that person or pup via email or text. The recipient then gets your message and then chooses what they want.
They have so many options to choose from. Candies, cookies, popcorn, snacks, tea, coffee, wine. Yes, wine. And Betty's fave, dog treats. Betty gets to choose from crunchy, chewy, jumbo, and training treats.
It's perfect for your fur baby or the dog lover in your life. Use code Betty White, that's all caps, one word, Betty White, to save $7 off of your Sugar Wish gift. We also have the link in the show notes. Sugar Wish always saves the day. So do you come up with all of those designs yourself?
I do. I have a few. I have a couple designs that are more complex that I have bought from another designer, but I'd say 95 to 98% of those are my designs. The most two-tone ones are mine. Anything that has, I think I have one design with color. It's Be Kind to Your Mind that I bought, but pretty much everything else is my own. Yeah.
Okay. The reason I'm asking this, we had a guest on another episode. She is in social work, and we were talking about anxiety, and mental health. And she said what she has found is that people are very quick to talk about anxiety, but she finds it interesting that people don't talk about depression as much. And she said, I wish that people would be more open about talking about, I really suffer from depression. And I thought, gosh, you're really right, because I find that when I talk about it, I say, well, I suffer from anxiety and depression, or I have experienced, back when I had depression and, I have anxiety. It's like I almost have to say them both, or I just feel like they don't come out in the open. So I was thinking, as I was thinking about your designs, let's just say you were going to come up with, okay, I need to do something else about depression, or I need to do another design about something else with mental health. How long does it take you? Do you just sort of go, I want to do a line about this? And then do you sort of brainstorm some ideas? And then how long is that process, from the thought to going out on a t-shirt or a product? Like, what is that process like? I'm just curious.
It kind of depends. So for depression, which I agree with you, I think depression is something that it's an interesting topic. When people are depressed, oftentimes they lean away from people close to them. They tend to isolate more, which is really normal for being depressed. And so it's harder to talk about when you're actually depressed, when you likely could use that support more. But oftentimes people might talk about it more openly when they're out of their depression.
Yeah.
It's one of those topics. So depression was one. I'm like, how do I represent this? That one took me, when I started doing the mental health designs, almost a year and a half before I came up with. So I ended up doing one that's depression is not a choice, because a lot of it is, to me, the stigma around it is that it's something people choose. It's not. It can be a combination of biochemical. It can be response to trauma or long-term trauma. It can be response to ongoing anxiety. There's a wide variety of reasons why people experience depression. And some people aren't treatable with their depression. They're not choosing to have that. So I try to think about things that resonate with whatever the mental health topic is. Sometimes I'll put it up on my stories and have people vote on designs or ideas. But it can take anywhere. Like the depression one took a long time to really come up with something that felt, in a sense, true to the challenge of depression. And sometimes I'll have an idea that just pops in my head, and then it takes me a few days a lot of my processing is done not actually drawing it out. It's actually done more thinking through kind of visually in my head, or visualizing how I would do it. And then I try to bring it to life. So yeah, it's definitely a variety. Sometimes, I could whip something up in a few hours. If it pops in my head and I love the idea, I'll just go. And I've been known to be like, I have an idea, I have to get out. I'll go create it.
Oh, that's so interesting. So obviously, as a mental health advocate and as a business woman, well, I know that you know this, that there's a high level of burnout as an entrepreneur. And there's a statistic that self-employed women are at a higher risk of having poorer mental health than men. What do you do to take care of yourself as a business owner, as someone who is self-employed and as an entrepreneur?
Well, some of it, there's kind of twofold to that. So one of those is, with FerrisBuilt, I kind of bit off more than I could chew. I started an Etsy shop, and then I created a standalone website. And to market and advertise a standalone website is a lot more of a financial investment than an Etsy store. And so I was getting burnout on Facebook advertising, marketing, engagement, and just not necessarily seeing the results from it the way that I wanted. And so I had to do kind of essentially a business self-care approach, where I said, the objective is to have the ability to sell this merch, not necessarily having a separate website. So I made a hard decision last fall that I was going to get rid of the website and just stick with the Etsy store, which allowed me the ability to not start to feel burned out on that, the constant pressure to market and all of that. And so I made that decision, which now it's really manageable for me. Now I can focus on, if I want to create new designs, I can engage with people on social media. I'm not putting pressure on myself to make this business grow to some scale that I was arbitrarily putting on myself. So I had to do a little bit of self-care with that, saying, what's the objective? The objective is to have this. Does it have to be a storefront? No. Can it be on Etsy? Yes. And so I had to weigh some of that. So that's how I did some self-care with that when I was noticing some of that burnout coming. And that was a good decision for me at the time. Additionally, I graduate this fall. I'm planning on opening my own private practice. And the idea of managing those two is a lot. So kind of listening to self-care from my business hat as well. I have a tendency sometimes to try to do much more in the business realm. I've learned through these experiences to take a step back and sit with it for maybe sit with it longer, sit with it before I make decisions about, routines or efforts I'm doing consistently. It's better to be consistent and do less than take on more and be inconsistent. So skills that I've learned of how to give myself space and room before making decisions on business. And then for self-care, I do a variety of things. It changes for me regularly. I get bored of the same self-care stuff. So right now, for example, I walk 20 to 30 minutes every day. Even if I'm doing other workouts, I just get out and I walk. That's been really kind of grounding for me. A lot of times between meetings or between sessions with clients, I'll do some of my own breathing exercises, just nice deep breaths. It's really calming for me. It calms my system down, gives me just kind of a reset. And then I also do like gentle yoga I have a mirror, one of those mirror workout things I got. It was a pandemic purchase.
Yeah.
I have these wonderful gentle yoga classes that I try to do a few times a week, which I find really grounding as well. And then something else I'm adding, someone shared this with me recently about the ritual of a morning routine. So whether it's tea or coffee, or my ritual is my morning smoothie, and I make a London fog with my Earl Grey tea. And so kind of trying to add little rituals here and there that might not be every day, but, a large part of the week. And then allowing space for new ones to come in that might replace something else. And so kind of giving space to allowing it to move as I'm, sometimes the self-care routine might be different in the winter than it is in the fall or in the summer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I relate to all of that. I take a morning walk every day with Betty White, my dog. And if I'm out of town, I take my walk. And I have found that became my self-care. I started right at the beginning of COVID because my anxiety was just full on high alert. And I started it then. And if I don't do it, if I'm out of town, and even if my routine is different, if I don't take that walk, I can tell it completely throws me off. I'm in a bad mood. It has become a ritual, that walk. It's just something that I have to do. And then when I'm home with Betty, it just has that sort of bonding thing with us. I just feel like she needs it as much as I do. And I don't know. And so that too has become a ritual. And I do the same thing where I come back and I have either a warm coffee or a tea. And it's very similar to what you're talking about in the breathing and all of that. So yeah, I love that. I love everything you said. It gave me the warm fuzzies. It's wonderful.
Yeah, some of it, something else I'm working on with self-care is, especially with anxiety, a lot of times anxiety just can manifest or ruminate or different things. And a lot of times I'll have a sense of urgency to want to get through it, or to, gosh, I just want to get over this feeling. I'm working a lot with self-care on just giving space to it, just saying, hey, but allowing myself to put it aside, if that makes sense. So visually saying, I'm feeling these feelings and that's okay, but I'm still going to go about my day. And I'm just going to these are alongside me instead of driving me. So I'm working a lot on giving space to the anxiety, giving space to these different feelings as part of my journey, but not letting them be in the driver's seat. And that helps a lot, as well as that just self-awareness of reminding myself like, oh, I'm feeling some of this. This isn't productive for me right now, but I'm going to set this aside and it's going to be here and I'll process it a little bit later, or when I have time.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So on the note of sort of blessings and curses of great business and the things that can come from it that you can look at as positive and crazy, and also can lead to burnout and how you handle things. Let's talk about the windfall of great business, and with what happened with FerrisBuilt that was wonderful, but can also be kind of crazy, is the Markle Effect, which I think is amazing. And I'm sure it was very amazing. And I can't wait to hear the things that you learned from it. But for those of you who don't know, and it was in 2020, right?
It was, October 2020. I'm like, what year?
Okay.
October 2020.
Okay. So was it World Mental Health Day?
No, it was actually, so when RBG passed away, I made a.
Oh, okay. So yeah. So Meghan Markle showed up to an event wearing an RBG t-shirt that she purchased from FerrisBuilt. And I love to imagine that you tell me if this is wrong, but I'm going to imagine that you went to bed and all is normal, and you wake up and you look at your phone and ping, 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 ping. There's all these notifications. You're like, what the hell is happening? and that maybe you're tagged by, people and Good Morning America and all these platforms and all these people and what Meghan wore and all this stuff that she's tagged everywhere, that you're tagged and you're like, what in the hell's happening? And then you've got all these orders because Meghan Markle purchased your RBG t-shirt and is wearing it. And then, oh my God, you have all these orders, which is a beautiful thing. But then, oh, I have to fill all of these orders. And now this is crazy. So is that how it happened, or how did it happen?
Yeah, it's actually pretty similar. So I was actually, it's kind of, to me, it's a little bit comical. So I was up with my partner, a place called Orcas Island up here in the San Juan Islands in the Northwest. And I had one of my COVID projects was I remodeled a vintage trailer and redid the interior. And he had built a wood kayak and I had previously built a wood kayak. And so we're like, we're going up, we're going to go camping in the wilderness. We're going to go take our kayaks out. So I had no cell reception at our campsite. But I had cell reception at the coffee spot at the campground. So what happened was we were coming back from a kayak. I got my phone out and it blew up. And I was like, how did I have that many sales? What is happening? I didn't really have a social media presence at the time because this was just my Etsy store. This was early in the FerrisBuilt journey where I was doing current event shirts. I hadn't started the mental health stuff yet. It was all largely current events or women's empowerment and things like that. So it took me a while to figure out what was going on. I could not, every second it was like order. And the reception's bad and the internet, I had to stand. At one point I was standing, holding my phone up, trying to get one bar.
Oh my God.
So my partner was like, do we need to drive to somewhere? And this is COVID, so you can't go inside at the time. So we ended up sitting outside of a little coffee spot so I could get on my computer and figure it out. And somebody had tagged me. I think I had an Instagram at the time, somebody tagged me on it with something about Meghan Markle. So I looked it up and that's when I started figuring out. And another friend reached out to me and said it was People magazine or something. She sent me the article and this is intermittent reception over the weekend. So what ended up happening is thankfully I do what's called print on demand. So I wasn't having to self-print all of those, which was good, but I was actually able to handle all of the demand for it because my print provider is called Printify. And essentially the orders automatically get routed to them with my design and then they print them to order. The problem was that I didn't realize this till I got back home. I had probably 600 or 700 orders that I didn't realize when I set up the automatic routing, I had added a color that I didn't connect to the store. So I had to manually go through. So I was spending I had so many people like, you sent me the wrong size. I'm like, yep, that was my fault because I did that manually. So I had a lot I had to do manual. So it was a wonderfully stressful and interesting few weeks. But I did it. And it was a neat experience and the Markle Effect definitely lasted for a while.
Yeah.
But what it did was it propelled me to finally say, I think I've got something with my t-shirt designs. It's right. I'm going to go ahead and try. And that's when I started doing mental health. I was like, I'm going to use this now as a platform for mental health, something more sustainable than current events and politics, which at the time, because of COVID and how it impacted my life, was something I was really passionate about. But I was like, I want to take this into mental health and start creating apparel for that.
You know what I love about water? Well, other than living by it.
Well, there are a million things to love about water. The sea life, the healing properties, part of the Earth's atmosphere.
Okay, all that, but I love drinking water.
Well, of course. But did you know that humans can only live a few days without water?
Yes, yet so many people live a dehydrated lifestyle.
Well, Liquid IV makes it super easy to stay hydrated.
Hey, folks, Liquid IV isn't scary. There aren't any IVs involved.
No, Liquid IV is a hydration multiplier. It's a powder form, an electrolyte mix that you just add to your water. It delivers 2 to 2.5 more hydration than water alone.
They have all kinds of flavors you can choose from, and they have some with energy multiplier and immune support. Also benefit, they are non-GMO, gluten-free, soy-free, and dairy-free.
If you're someone who either has trouble getting your water in or maybe just wants to get in the express lane with your hydration, you should definitely try Liquid IV.
For our listeners, if you go to their website, liquid-iv.com, and use code ARNERADVENTURES, you can save 25% off of your order and get free shipping.
That's awesome. We'll link it in the show notes too. Liquid IV, fueling life's adventures. So I guess it's not like I would ever ask you to give this away, but I guess since you're not actually packaging the items. It's not like all of a sudden one day you got this order from someone in Etsy called Meghan Markle, and then you were packaging a t-shirt and sending it to her and going, oh, I wonder if this is actually Meghan Markle. I mean, you never got an order that said Meghan Markle, right?
No. So I had to go, I couldn't figure it out. So I actually went back and I was able to figure out the order. It took a little bit of sleuthing, but it was definitely not her name on it.
Okay.
But I was able to figure out what it was. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. That is.
But I would not, when it came through, I wouldn't have known it from anybody else, but I was able to, yeah.
But you were able to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
That is so interesting. Well, so the lessons you learned from that, were you able to then implement different systems in place from that in case?
Yeah. So
in case, let's say when it happens again.
Yeah, I was. So what I learned from that was the changes that I had done manually weren't automatically porting to my printer. So I don't do that any longer. Now I make sure I'm pushing from my printer to Etsy instead of vice versa. And then, I mean, I didn't ever have to shut the shop down. So the process worked really well. The only reason why I had a bog for me was because I had a lot of these going to manual, or I had to manually update the orders as they were coming in. But otherwise, yeah. So the learnings for me was just don't try to bypass the system that already works. Don't try to change stuff. Leave it. If it's working, let it work.
Right. Oh, it's so amazing. I just love that happened. I think that's such a great thing. And I love that you call it the Markle Effect. I think that's wonderful.
No, it was neat. And it was at a time when I was in school for a year at the time. I still, had my company had shut down about 5-6 months prior at that point. It was really nice to see some of that validation through, that I was like, okay, I've got something here. And then then I spent until this last fall, pretty much full time on trying to that's when I decided I'm going to try a website. I'm going to see if this can be bigger than just, Etsy, and gave that a really good go for a year. And then made the hard decision this last fall that, I'm putting a lot of effort into something when I can actually have Etsy and still do the same thing without putting this level of stress and pressure on myself. And so that shift back. Yeah.
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 So kind of on that topic and kind of not, but I guess we're talking about like mental health and inspiration. Who inspires you? Like from either a business standpoint or whether it's just overall big picture, who inspires you?
I think a lot of my inspiration comes from my kids. I watch their generation and how open they are about their feelings or mental health topics. They're normalizing things differently than my generation is, or my generation did. So I find my kids, their friends, all of that really inspiring. And I find myself curious and open to learn how they view the world in such a much more accepting and encompassing way. So I find that really inspiring. I think I find people that have overcome inspiring. I don't necessarily have a name per se, but I find myself drawn to stories of people that have gone through hardships or trauma, and they find their passion in life, or they do things, later on, and they are resilient. Stories of resiliency I find really inspiring. So yeah.
Yeah. So, this is a big question. So you don't have to think about it on a big picture scale. You can think about it even as minute, small changes. But what recommendations would you make, if you could even make any, again, big or small, to the mental health system in general? I mean, again, that's a huge question, but it could be big or small. There's a lot of changes that need to be made. But what recommendations would you make if you could make anything, magic wand? What would you do? What changes would you make?
I actually have a few ideas. I feel the more I'm getting further into this field, the more I'm learning, the more I find myself being like, these things need to change. And one of those is just accessibility. I find a lot of insurance providers push back on, mental health coverage. They don't offer it. They limit the number. They limit the coverage. Some don't cover it outright. A lot of mental health care providers are having to go what's called out of network and not be in network, because the insurance providers are really not reimbursing healthcare providers at living wages for the areas that they're at. So I think on some level, having better, overall healthcare coverage and reimbursement rates for therapists so that they're not incentivized to actually leave the insurance network. So I think fixing kind of the actual healthcare coverage in our insurance would be wonderful. And the other thing would be, with education, as you're being educated to become a therapist, it's a very general education, but most individuals aren't struggling with just general things. They're struggling with specific issues, specific topics, potentially mental health pathologies or diagnoses that they're wanting to address. And so on some level, I wish clinicians would go through an education, they get the general, but then they're required to potentially have some kind of specialty so that it offers a little bit more of niche-based education, so that that's a requirement for licensure or something. So you have some kind of additional education beyond more of a general
Right.
training.
Right. I think it's interesting how insurance plans, at least, are moving more towards covering nutritionists, and they're covering more about, food, education, things like that, but not mental health. And look, it's great. I'm glad, but I do think that's interesting. I remember, Jerry and I don't eat meat. One of the things that, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, I wanted us to have, sort of meet with a nutritionist and understand more about, the macronutrients and all of that, and how much, different things we were getting in. And I was like, I wonder if our insurance covers that. Oh yeah, we don't have to pay a thing. I mean, without getting on a rant about insurance, like our copay for mental health is terrible. I just think, wow, isn't that interesting? Like, and I remember when nutritionists weren't covered at all or any of that, but I just think it's interesting if they're covering that, like, why aren't you helping out a little bit more for mental health? And at least here in North Carolina, even public mental health and what's accessed through the counties are sort of going away, and there's less access in that realm. So
there really is. There's wait lists on agencies. It's difficult to find any, counseling support in many communities. It's really hard to get a therapist. A lot of, people try to reach out and don't hear back from multiple therapists they call. It's, I don't like to say this lightly, but in a sense, it's like a pandemic within a pandemic. And mental health right now is, the ramifications of the pandemic, especially when I look at kids and teens and, school age kids, like it's really impacted them. And the fact that the accessibility through insurance seems like it's starting to be impacted, it's more difficult to find providers. It's a problem. And I don't know how to fix it. That's bigger brains than myself, but I just, it'd be nice if it was addressed. And
I agree. Well, you talked about your girls being two of your inspirations. What values do you hope to pass along to your girls? And I'm sure that they see so much in what you do, and especially with your business, what you do for mental health advocacy. But what values do you hope that you pass down to them?
I think one of the things that, as parents, we don't know what we've done wrong until we find out when they're adults. I think.
When they go to therapy.
Until they go and figure out. But, one of the things that's really important to me is validating each other's experiences, perceptions, feelings, and really making sure they feel like they have a voice. So it's the idea of saying, your perception is your perception, your experience is your experience, your feelings are your feelings, but you still get to choose how to behave. You get to choose how to respond. And so having kind of a self-awareness. So I don't know if it's necessarily a value or as much as just an idea of saying, you can validate your own feelings, your own emotions, as well as empathize with somebody else's, even if you don't agree. So it's the idea of being able to just hold space for each other, honor yourself. In our home, when there's, feelings or emotions that come up, we sit down, we talk about it. We validate the decision, whatever the feelings or emotions are about. Even if a decision is different than what one person wants, they still feel validated that they were heard. So it's about those aspects of relational components. How are you with friends? Are you honest with how you feel? How do things make you feel? And just really holding space for what their experience is, but also empathizing and understanding others. There's probably a long answer to that, but that's
no, I think that's great. What was the last book you read?
Oh, goodness. So I am reading I'm reading 2 or 3 right now, but the one I'm in the middle of, it's called Internal Family Systems and Therapy. So it's a therapeutic model or approach that I'm quite drawn to. So one of my approaches in therapy is kind of trauma informed or somatic based, so body work. And Internal Family Systems looks at therapy through a sense of parts of us, right? So there's a part of me that feels this way, or a part of me that feels that way, or thinks this way. And so I'm exploring kind of that model and learning more about that.
Okay. What book would you recommend that everyone read?
Oh, there's a book. Okay. Because my therapy brain, there's a book that I love that I think is so insightful to understand. And it's called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's a wonderful book on trauma and how it impacts our bodies and mind. Bessel van der Kolk is the author. Whether you listen to an audiobook or read it, it's a really good book.
We'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah. And it's, I look at things a lot of times through both body and mind. So sometimes you might not be thinking it, but you're feeling a response in your body. And I like how his approach kind of addresses all of those. So
Yeah.
I really like that book. Yeah.
Okay. Love that. Okay. So here are the rapid fire questions for you. There's 10 of them. So we're going to go through them as sort of a this or that.
Okay.
Okay. So number 1 is sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Okay. Number 2, go to bed early or sleep in?
Go to bed early.
Okay. Number 3, wine or coffee?
Coffee.
Okay. Number 4, handwritten letter or email?
Ooh. Handwritten letter. Handwritten letter.
Okay, I totally agree. It's such a lost art. Like, I love getting a handwritten letter.
Of course, I'm thinking about my handwriting. I'm like, I couldn't even read my own now because I don't handwrite enough. Like,
I used to pride myself on my handwriting, and now I'm like, I can't even read it. Like, I don't even know what I wrote.
They don't even teach cursive anymore in school. Like, kids aren't.
They
so like,
don't?
Yeah, no. And so I'm like, I need to keep practicing my cursive. This is a lost art.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Number 5. Would you rather dine al fresco or indoors?
Al fresco.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Number 6. How do you recharge? Socially, around people, or alone time?
Alone time.
Okay. Number 7. Actual book or audiobook?
Ooh. Actual book.
Okay.
Because otherwise I get on the audiobook and then the next thing I'm on social media and then it's my device. I have to do a physical book if I'm going to.
I know. Okay. Number 8. Passenger or driver?
Driver.
Okay. Number 9. Do you prefer the beach or the mountains?
Ooh. Is there a both option in there? Do I get the I think I'm going to go to the beach because I get the mountains in the Northwest, so I miss the beach more.
Yep. Okay. Number 10, Jerry thinks this is the most important, and he thinks that you can tell so much about people by this one. Ketchup or mustard?
Oh, man. It really depends on what I'm eating, but ketchup, I would say.
Okay.
That is mixed with ketchup, so this is a trick question.
Okay. So I was going to say that is the one that I will not choose between because I like the mix.
Yeah.
I will not choose. I like to have the mix and I just won't choose. And Jerry says that says something about me, that I like the mix. But yeah. So anyway.
There might be a theory around this. Now I want to look it up. Like, how do you
I know.
on ketchup or mustard? Well, then mustard has so many options, right?
I know.
Mustard and you've got.
I know. Okay. And then the most important question that we do think, and then we ask everyone is, what does a life well lived mean to you?
I think a life well lived is becoming your authentic self. Like on that journey throughout your life is challenging yourself to be a better version of yourself, to learn from your past mistakes, to work towards that authentic version of you, which, is growing, right? So,
yeah, I love that. I agree. I was going to say it does change, but I also think that at least I can speak for myself as a younger person. I don't know how authentic I was being. Like, I just think about how young I was. I just wanted to impress people. And, especially when you're young and a teenager, I just think, gosh, how authentic was I ever? And it's such a struggle and how exhausting it is to always feel like if you're not being authentic, how exhausting that is.
Yes. And authenticity is, I think, in many ways really brave. And I think it's a sign of resilience. You're just who you are and in all situations in your life and not out to behave or be in certain ways for other people's benefit. You just are your authentic self. And I think that's a life well lived. And that, the journey to the authentic self can be, as you said, sometimes you have times where you're not feeling you're as in touch with it. And that's okay. Yeah. It's just that a life well lived being the desire to keep coming from that place.
Yeah. I love that. Impromptu question. This wasn't even planned. I'm just curious. If you could rewind and do Ferris Built from the beginning all over again, would you do it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Good. I like that answer. Good. Okay, good. Okay. Okay. Well, how can our listeners find you if they want to purchase one of your awesome, inspiring products and, be part of your advocacy? How can they find you?
Well, I am on Instagram. On that page, I have pictures of my merchandise and links to my FerrisBuilt shop. And then if you go to Etsy, you can also search FerrisBuilt, which is one word, FerrisBuilt, and you'll see my merch there as well. The shop is also named FerrisBuilt there as well.
And we're going to link all of that in the show notes. And we are so appreciative of your time. This was such an honor. And I'm so thankful to have finally virtually met you face to face.
We have to do this again. We have to have Jerry and do coffee.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Well, gosh, Lindsey is such an inspiration from an entrepreneurial standpoint and an advocacy standpoint.
Oh, yes, indeed. I really enjoyed her approach and her thoughtfulness, I think, towards many things. One thing that stood out to me in particular was how she spoke about how she relates with her girls and at home, her home life, and how she gets them to speak about what they're thinking about, but always gets them to relate how they feel about what they're thinking about. And I think that's important. And it's kind of neat that's what kind of really struck me. It starts at home. And then that's probably what makes her a good therapist.
Yeah, I think that, when she was talking about values and things that she wants to instill in them and pass down to them, and then about the life well lived and about just being your authentic self, she's going to be, a fantastic therapist. We chatted after the show for a bit, and I told her that she's so easy to talk to, such a great listener, just a beautiful soul, beautiful person inside and out. What a joy it was to talk with her and have her on the show. I'm so glad that we were finally able to do that. I wish that you could have been there for the episode. We did say that we're going to have to do it again so that you can be on there.
No, I would have really enjoyed that, but I did enjoy what I saw. That was...
Yeah. It was
wonderful.
It was really nice. We really enjoyed it. And I hope that you all enjoyed the conversation with her. And I hope she was as inspiring to you as she was to us, as she is to us, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. If this episode resonated with you at all, please share it with a friend. Please go and visit Lindsey Ferris on her website and her Instagram, and we will link how you can purchase something or a few things from her shop, FerrisBuilt, and we're going to link all those for you in the show notes.
That's right. She's got some really cool things there at her shop, so check them out.
As always, you can find us at arneradventures.com, on Instagram at arneradventures, also linked in the show notes.
So until next time, enjoy the journey that you're on. We're wishing you lots of adventures.
Bye.